This is for chapter 6 in the psych class. And chapter 6 is on learning. And the chapter is really dominated by behaviorism. There's other forms of learning, obviously, but uh, we get most of it's behaviorism. But let's just start and go and get into it. Uh, the chapter's on learning. What's learning? Learning is a change of behavior due to experience. A change of behavior, usually a permanent change of behavior due to experience. It's L equals delta B yields EXP, what's experience. So if you have learning, you have to have a change of behavior, and it's got to be due to experience. And if you have a change of behavior due to experience, you have learned. So uh, then the book starts out with classical conditioning, Pavlovian conditioning, where elicited behavior, where behavior is drawn out, and of course it talks about the traditional uh, Pavlovian experiment where he rang a bell and then he paired the bell with food, and then after a while he rang the bell, the dog salivated. Well, in your homework, you have to identify NS, which is neutral stimulus, which means it has no R at the moment. UCS, which is unconditioned stimulus, which is stimulus that has not been learned or conditioned, like pain. You don't have to learn about pain. UCR is unconditioned response. That is a response that has not been conditioned or learned. Like if I blow smoke in your eyes, you're going to blink. That UCR is a reflex, usually. Then a CS is a conditioned stimulus, a stimulus that's been learned or conditioned, and a CR is a conditioned response, which is a condition that is learned or conditioned. So I'll give you a couple of hints here. The NS and the CS are exactly the same thing. Like in the Pavlovian experiment, the bell is a neutral stimulus in the beginning, and at the end, it's a conditioned stimulus. The UCR and the CR are the same response, except they have different stimuli. The UCR is salivating to food, and the CR is salivating to the bell. So you have to label those. Um, for example, when I was in college, we blew smoke in a baby's eye. I know, and made them blink, and we had a little gator clicker because the University of Florida, and eventually you just did a clicker and the babies would blink. So the neutral stimulus was a clicker because at first the babies had no idea what that thing sound was. We blew smoke. Smoke is a UCS, and you blink to the smoke as a UCR. That's natural reflex. That's not learned or conditioned. And then eventually you do the little clicker and they blinked. So that's the conditioned stimulus and the conditioned response. And then we talked about four things that Pavlovian used in his experiment. One is reinforcement, because after he showed the dogs food, he actually gave them the food. And reinforcement is anything that increases a behavior. Anything. If behavior increases, that's reinforcement. I don't care what it is if it increases behavior, it's reinforcement. So, uh, I want you to smile, so I stab you with a little needle, and you smile more. That's reinforcement. Don't go by what it is, go by what it does. The extinction, that's when a behavior stops due to lack of reinforcement. If you don't reinforce something, it stops. So if you keep studying and you keep flunking, pretty soon you stop studying because you're not getting reinforced. Or if you go to the mailbox and you never get any mail, you stop going. So extinction, how did Pavlov do extinction? He stopped giving the dogs food. So they would see the food and they would salivate. Pretty soon they go, hey, I'm not salivating anymore because the fact is there's no food. Then there's generalization, which is similar stimuli produce the same response. Similar stimuli produce the same response. that means, like some people want to test A, B, C, D, and E all look the same to them, because so they're similar stimuli produce the same response. Um, uh, have you seen someone from the back and thought they were a friend of yours, and you called their name, they turned around, and there wasn't? That's generalization. Or we like Cracker Barrel breakfasts, so when we travel, we stop at Cracker Barrel. We just assume they're the same everywhere. So that's generalization. And what Pavlov showed that was he rang a bell and the dog salivated. He hit a triangle and the dog salivated. He had a metronome and the dog salivated. So they were all responding to a similar stimuli. Then he had discrimination, which is a certain stimulus produces a certain response. A certain stimulus produces a certain response. So when you come to a red light, you stop. And on a test, you select the correct answer. And if I call your name in class, I want only you to respond. That's discrimination. And what did Pavlov do to show discrimination? He only reinforced the bell. So pretty soon they stopped salivating to the metronome or the triangle because they weren't getting reinforced. Okay. Then we go from classical, which is elicited, forced, to operant, B.F. Skinner, emitted behavior, which is voluntary. And operant, you operate on the environment. In classical, the environment operates on you. And so operant is much more powerful because it's been generated from you, you're not being forced to do it. If you study on your own, you probably study a lot harder than somebody forcing you to study. And so we'll stop here, and I'll pick it up in a little while.